Welcome once again to a review of the Evolving Analyst book. And I have with me today one of the writers, one of the authors in the book, Dr. Joe Perez. The title of his article is Barking Up the Right Tree. It's in the data analysis section of the book. And just to give you a brief synopsis of Dr. Joe Perez, so he is a senior systems specialist, and he also wrote the foreword to the book as well as an article in the book. So welcome to the show, Dr. Joe.
Thank you so much, Marcus. I am just honored and delighted to be a part of it. I appreciate you being so kind as to ask me to be on your program.
A pleasure as always. And
Yep,
just for the audience's review, I want to say that your article here, Dr. Joe's article, I like it very much because it tends to focus on how business analysts can misuse data.
hmm
They can misuse data by measuring what is easy rather than what is meaningful.
yeah,
And I really like how you highlight the risk of what we call false confidence created by dashboards, metrics. They look impressive. They're really
yeah.
nice, but they can fail to support good decisions. Um, Want to start off with this question to you. What
hmm
made this story especially personal for you as a data leader?
Sure. Well, excuse me, Marcus. This is this story is personal to me because it reflects a journey that I have lived time and time again. The challenge of making sensible over complexity, and then taking that and turning it into something that people can understand and get meaning from. You know, early in my career, I um, I was often confronted with data sets that felt, well, just about as tangled and as impenetrable as an old growth forest, to use the metaphor, numbers upon numbers, and none of them speaking clearly, if you will, but most of them demanding attention. I remember dealing with feeling both exhilarated and daunted somehow all at the same time by the sheer possibility that the right visualization or narrative could somehow illuminate insights that nobody else had ever seen. But over time, I came to the realization. See, my role wasn't to nothing more than simply analyze a report. No, but to go beyond the status quo, right? To go beyond the beloved Babok, if you will, and act as a guide, as someone who could help others see both the forest and the trees, if you will, and occasionally the rainbow eucalyptus hidden among them. Speaking of which, what you asked about the story, the metaphor itself of the rainbow eucalyptus is particularly close to my heart because it reminds me that beauty and clarity often emerge from a process of shedding, if you will. That is, of letting go of what's familiar or what's expected in order to reveal something striking and new. Um, just as this particular tree's bark, the rainbow eucalyptus, it peels away layer by layer, as our audience will read about in the book, revealing unexpected colors and patterns. And in that same way, the most powerful data stories emerge when we strip away the clutter, when we resist the urge to overcomplicate things, forget about the fancy stuff, right? And focus on what's the most important thing to my stakeholders. That's got to be paramount. And in my own work, well, I've witnessed how a well crafted data visualization or a thoughtfully structured analysis can spark a moment of understanding, raise a few eyebrows, shift the conversation, and sometimes even change the direction of an entire project, Marcus. For you see, this here is what makes the story personal. Not just the data, mind you, but the people that are involved, right? It's um, about the relationships that we build, the trust that we nurture, the concerns that we address, and the way we communicate meaningful, actionable insights. Being a data leader has taught me that our work ultimately, well, it's about service, right? Serving our stakeholders, our peers, our organizations, and our communities by making sense of complexity and enabling wise decision making. That's why those four best practices that I talked about in my chapter, they all began with the letter C, right? If you've read the book, you'll remember it, those of you out there, right? Yeah, let's see, I got to remember them too, right? What are they? Clarity, consistency, connection, and context, right? When you remember those things, they go way beyond being best practices in the evolving analyst. Okay, pick up your copy today, folks. But seriously, though, they're much more than best practices, Marcus. They are values that I try to live by every day.
Superb. Yeah, we want to see the forest for the trees and the trees for the
Yep.
forest. Uh, and you mentioned four items that start with the letter C, which I think are vitally important and crucial. Now, as I did mention to the audience, your book is in the data analysis chapter. So let's talk about BAs and data analysts, and how can business analysts and data analysts avoid chasing these impressive but very meaningless metrics that we do see sometimes.
Well, let me tell you something, Marcus. Um, this right here is a classic trap. Okay, and it's one that I think every analyst falls into at least once in their career, maybe more. The allure of vanity metrics, as I've heard them called, is real, absolutely real. Those big shiny numbers that look great in the presentation, but offer little substance when it comes to driving action or understanding impact. Now, if we're honest, sometimes these metrics get chosen because, well, they're nice to look at. They're easy to measure, easy to display, or easy to explain. Um, but as I've learned, and sometimes the hard way, look, just because a metric is accessible does not mean that it's meaningful. All right. So to avoid this whole thing, first step, excuse me, ground every metric in purpose. And by that I mean ask yourself some questions, right? Ask yourself and your stakeholders, hey, y'all, what are we really trying to achieve here? Okay, a metric is a good compass, but not a trophy. It needs to guide decisions and not just decorate a dashboard. Look, I encourage business analysts everywhere to start every single measurement conversation with one simple word, and that word is why. Right? Why does this measure matter? What are we going to do differently if it moves up or down? Listen, if you can't answer those questions, well, then it's time to reconsider what you're tracking. All right. Secondly, a way to steer clear of meaningless metrics is to embrace collaboration over isolation. Didn't John Donne say, no man is an island, or whoever it was? Anyway, too often, excuse me, metrics are selected by just one person in a vacuum, unilaterally, without any input from the people who are actually going to be using those insights. Pardon me. I have found that co-designing metrics with business partners, product owners, and even frontline staff is going to lead to much richer, more relevant measures. See, when you involve others in defining what success looks like, guess what? You are far more likely to land on indicators that genuinely reflect progress and enable learning. And I guess the last things I want to say about this, Marcus, do not be afraid to challenge the status quo. Just because you've always done something in a certain way, we've always tracked X, Y, and Z. That does not mean that X, Y, and Z is still relevant today, right? The business landscape changes, priorities shift, strategies evolve, and our metrics should evolve alongside them. Okay, I always advocate for regular metric reviews, periodic checkpoints where we ask ourselves, is this still helping us? And if the answer is no, well, guess what, Marcus? It's time to let that metric go. Let it go in the same way that the rainbow eucalyptus, lets go of its bark, sheds its bark to make room for new growth. Do the same thing.
I like that. If it's no, let the metrics go.
That's
Um,
right.
and
That's
I like
exactly
this.
right.
I like this idea of this vanity metrics. You see sort of Facebook posts or posts on social media that are just all about vanity, and that's
Yeah.
what we want to see. It has to be meaningful um,
Yes.
metrics that have some form of substance, and I think you've articulated that exceptionally well. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Um, One question. What's one
Okay.
question that you think that instantly improves data conversations?
Hmm. Okay. One question. All right. Well, Marcus, if if I had to pick just one question, sir, it would be this: what decision will this help us make? All right. This question is deceptively simple, but you know what? I see it as a practically life changing question, really. But both in theory and in practice. All right, let me elaborate on that. Um, excuse me. You see, often data and conversations often get bogged down in what can be measured or what's interesting, what catches the eye, what's the new thing, without connecting the dots to what are the actual business needs. Okay, by anchoring that conversation to decision making, instantly you're going to cut through all the noise and you're going to redirect attention to the things that are really important to your stakeholders. It prompts everybody at the table, analysts, stakeholders, executives, you name it, to go ahead and articulate the action that'll flow from the insight rather than the insight that'll flow from the action. That's backwards. Do not get those mixed up. All right. If no one can answer that question, once again, Marcus, I see it as a big red flag that maybe, just maybe, you are chasing data for its own sake rather than for impact. Now, this question also has a wonderful way of surfacing unspoken assumptions and clarifying intent. It encourages a focus on outcomes rather than outputs. All right. When I ask teams, what decision will this help us to make? I often see a bit of a shift. Okay. Requests for reports are going to turn into concrete discussions about goals, risks, vision, and priorities. It becomes clear whether we're seeking to optimize a process, mitigate a risk, seize an opportunity, or just simply satisfy curiosity. And once that decision is defined, well, then it's much easier to determine what data is truly needed and how to present it effectively. As I wrote in the chapter, and I just happen to have the book here with me. See? All right, let's see. The bullet points on page 86 down near the bottom. It says a well designed visualization that embraces clarity ensures a natural flow of information. Adopting consistency makes that information glow. Thirdly, while a strong storytelling helps show key connections. And lastly, the right context ensures audiences truly know the meaning behind the data, right? Flow, grow, show, and know. All right, this idea, wow, it's just as relevant to our conversations as it is to our charts and our dashboards. When we start with the decisions at stake, you know what we do? We create that natural flow that I'm talking about. Uh, you know, um, getting our stakeholders from raw data to shared understanding. This illuminates not only what the numbers say, but why they matter. And building a context that lets everybody in the room connect those dots. And in practice, well, it's the difference between producing reports that they're just going to sit around gathering dust, okay, digital dust anyway, and sparking moments that drive real change. That's what we want to do. When you truly know the meaning behind the data, oh my gosh, to that point, for business analysts, this question is a tool for empowerment, my friend. It gives you permission to challenge requests, to dig deeper, and to make sure your work isn't just busy work, but truly value added. And in my experience, oh man, that leads to better conversations, more strategic analysis, more eye opening insights, and even more meaningful impact. And in a world that's flowing with data but starved for clarity, I forget who said that. But anyway, that's the kind of question that's going to make all the difference in the world. And the way I see it, Marcus, when we move beyond chasing numbers and start telling stories that are going to spark understanding and action and answer that question, what decision will this help us make? Well, then that is when we stop just analyzing data and we start transforming organizations one insight at a time. And you can take that to the bank, sir.
Show, flow, go, and know.
You
I
got it,
think
Bubba.
we're not just deeply enriched, but I think this is money that you can take to the bank. It certainly will make us wealthy, and certainly knowledge. And I think that's highly valuable today. I really want to thank you very much, Dr. Joe, for being a contributing author, and
Yes, sir.
not just for the forward, but also for an article in the book. And to the audience, I really, just to summarize briefly what Dr. Joe has talked about, I really like how you emphasize that analysts add value by framing the right questions first, ensuring that data is interpreted in context, guiding stakeholders toward insight rather than surface level reporting. Thank you very much, Dr. Joe. It's always a
Yeah.
fabulous honor to just listen to you speak.
Thank you, sir. The honor and pleasure are mine indeed.
Superb. Have yourself a great day.
You too, sir.